I think I didn't do anything wrong, just told one little lie about working late again. But when I saw him standing in the hotel lobby, watching me check in with someone else's name, my heart froze. I thought I could talk my way out of it, until the envelope hit my hand. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Elara Wynn, and I swear I didn't do anything wrong. I just said I was working late again. Everyone lies about work sometimes, right? It wasn't even about cheating, not really. It was about feeling seen, feeling wanted. Daniel has been distant for months. Quiet dinners, polite smiles, nothing more. So when Evan asked if I wanted to grab a drink after work, I said yes. It wasn't serious, just two people talking. But that one lie turned into a habit, and habits turn into secrets faster than you think. I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal, that Daniel was too busy to notice. Then, last night, I saw him. He was standing in the hotel lobby, calm and expressionless, watching me sign in under someone else's name. He didn't shout or cause a scene. He just stood there, holding his phone like he'd already known everything. I tried to smile, tried to say something light, but my throat closed. Now I can't stop replaying the look on his face. Too calm, too final. Everyone keeps saying I should apologize, but I don't even know what for. I just wanted to feel alive again. Is that really such a crime? When I say it all started with work, I mean it. Nothing dramatic, nothing wild. Just a normal Thursday with too many emails and not enough coffee. I was sitting in that freezing open office, trying to look busy while the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled like burnt printer ink and stress. Evan leaned over the divider and asked if I was staying late again. I laughed and said I had no choice. The new campaign deadline was next week. He smiled and said I worked harder than anyone else on the team. That small comment, harmless as it was, hit differently. It felt like sunlight. At home, Daniel never said things like that anymore. By 6, most people were gone. The office turned quiet, except for the hum of the vending machine. Evan offered to walk me to the parking lot. It felt normal, professional. But in the elevator, when he mentioned the hotel bar nearby, I didn't say no. I told myself it was just a quick drink to unwind, to talk about the project. The way he looked at me made me feel seen, not like a wife someone stopped noticing. I didn't go inside that night. I really didn't. But I thought about it, and that was enough to make me lie when Daniel asked why I was home so late. He was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, the glow making his face look pale and unreadable. He asked if I was still working with that new sales guy. I said yes, but only during office hours. He nodded once and said, "Long hours again?" I said, "Deadlines don't finish themselves." He didn't argue, just closed the laptop and carried it to the guest room. That's when the distance started to feel official. 2 mugs on the counter every morning. His rinsed clean, mine half full and cold. I tried to ignore how he'd started locking that small desk drawer in the corner of the study. I even laughed about it to my friend Tess. She said it probably had receipts or old bills. Maybe it did, or maybe it had something else. At work the next day, Evan sent a meme about work wives. I rolled my eyes and told him he was ridiculous. But I didn't delete it. I liked how it made me feel, like I was still someone worth noticing. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Daniel had texted, "Pick up milk. Also, dinner at home tonight." Simple, but somehow it annoyed me. He didn't ask how my day was, didn't send a heart emoji, just a grocery list. I replied, "Sure," and went back to pretending I was swamped with reports. That evening, I cooked pasta and tried to make conversation. Daniel asked how the new campaign was going. I said fine. He asked if Evan was still assigned to my team. I said yes, but only for numbers. He said, "Good." Then he went quiet again. The silence stretched between us like glass. I tapped my fork against the plate and said he was being paranoid. He said he wasn't. He said he just didn't like when things felt off. I told him he needed to relax, that not every late night was a conspiracy. He said, "You're good with words. You use them like armor." I told him that sounded rehearsed. He said, "Maybe I've had time to practice." Later, when I passed by the study, I heard the faint whir of the printer. I peeked in and saw a blank sheet sliding out. He picked it up, folded it neatly, and placed it into a manila folder marked Household. I asked what that was for. He said bills again, still calm. But something about the neat handwriting on the label made my skin prickle. Daniel had never been organized like that. That weekend, we visited my mother. She made tea and whispered that Daniel was too serious lately. She said some men don't know how to handle confident women. I told her exactly. He should be proud that I work hard. She said, "He's lucky to have someone who doesn't depend on him for everything." That made me feel righteous again, like I had a point. Sunday night, I told Daniel I might have to work late again on Monday. He didn't react, just tapped something into his phone. I caught a glimpse of the screen before he turned it over. A calendar reminder popped up. Downtown 3:15 p.m. I asked what it was for. He said, "Just errands." The next morning, he left earlier than usual. At the office, Tess teased me about my office crush. I told her to stop being dramatic, but we both laughed anyway. She asked if Daniel knew how often I stayed late with Evan. I told her it wasn't a big deal. We were professionals. She said, "Professionals don't text at midnight." I said, "You're nosy." But inside, I liked that she noticed. It made me feel interesting again. By Wednesday, Daniel had stopped waiting for me to eat dinner. He'd leave my plate covered with foil, a quiet message that said, "I see what you're doing, but I won't fight you over it." I hated that calmness. Anger I could handle. Silence made me feel small, so I decided to prove to him I was still in control. That Friday, I came home late again. He was on the couch, half asleep with the TV glowing softly. I said the team meeting ran long. He nodded. I asked if he didn't believe me. He said, "I believe everything you say." The way he said it made my chest tighten. I told him I was tired and went upstairs. In the mirror, I looked different. Maybe guilt or maybe thrill, I couldn't tell. I texted Evan, "Tomorrow? Same place?" He replied instantly, "Of course." I stared at that reply longer than I should have. Then I deleted the thread and set my phone face down. The next morning, Daniel was already gone. The coffee pot was still warm, and there was a sticky note on the counter, milk in the fridge. Meeting later, don't wait up. His handwriting was neat, almost printed. I checked the clock, 8:10, too early for work on a Saturday. My phone buzzed a few minutes later, Evan reminding me of our chat. I should have cancelled. I knew I should have. But instead, I put on my blue blouse, the one Daniel used to compliment before he stopped noticing. On my way out, I saw Sophie's art project on the fridge, a crayon drawing of the three of us holding hands. My stomach twisted for a second, but I told myself it wasn't that serious. The drive to the city felt unreal. The sky was grey, and everything looked like static. I parked 2 blocks from the hotel so no one would see my car. Evan was already waiting in the lobby, holding 2 coffees. He smiled like everything was perfectly normal. We sat down and talked about work. Then nothing, then everything. He made me laugh. He said I deserved someone who noticed how hard I tried. I said Daniel used to. He said maybe Daniel forgot what he had. The more he talked, the easier it was to agree. When his hand brushed mine, I didn't move it away right away. I told myself it was just comfort, nothing else. Then, for a moment, I thought I saw movement near the glass doors. Just a shadow, maybe a trick of the light. I told myself I was being paranoid. Evan leaned closer and said I looked tense. I said I was fine, but my pulse wouldn't calm down. After we said goodbye, I drove home, and acted like it had been an ordinary day. Daniel was in the driveway, wiping dust from his car hood. He asked if I'd had a good day at work. I said it was long. He nodded, wiped his hands and said, "I'll be in the study." That night, I heard the faint hum again, the printer, steady and low, then a small mechanical click. I opened the study door halfway and saw him sliding something into a clear folder, labeling it with today's date. I asked what he was doing. He said, "Keeping things organized." I laughed, said he was turning into his father. He smiled faintly and said, "Maybe I've learned something from him after all." I said he didn't have to act like a detective. He said, "Detectives look for the truth. I already have it." I froze, then told him he was being dramatic. He said nothing, just shut the drawer softly. I stood there, waiting for him to explain, to shout, to accuse, but he just turned off the light and walked past me like I was furniture. The silence followed him down the hall. I tried to tell myself it didn't mean anything. He was probably bluffing. Men always bluff when they feel small. Still, I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed once, Evan sending a late-night emoji. I started to reply, but stopped when I saw a reflection in the dark window. Me, alone, glowing blue from the phone light, and Daniel's closed door down the hall. I told myself I could fix it with charm. That's always been my strength, turning tension into laughter, blame into a joke. It worked on Daniel before, it worked on my mother, it worked on everyone. So when Tess suggested a dinner with our friends, I agreed immediately. I thought a little public normalcy would help. People always assume that if you can smile in public, things at home must be fine. I believed that too. We booked a table on the restaurant terrace downtown, a cozy place with fairy lights and cheap rosé. Tess said to invite Daniel, make it look spontaneous. I texted him from work, adding a smiley. He replied just one word. Sure. That was his new tone lately. Neutral, polite, unreadable. When I arrived, he was already there, talking to the waiter about seating. He stood when I approached, but not to hug me, just to be polite. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, and he looked too calm. I sat across from him, trying to sound light. I said I was proud of how patient he'd been with my schedule. He said patience was easy when you expect things to stay the same. I laughed and told him he sounded like a fortune cookie. Tess and her boyfriend joined us, followed by 2 of our co-workers. The conversation started loud, full of jokes, gossip, and wine. I leaned into it, exaggerated my stories, played the charming hostess. When someone asked how Daniel and I were doing, I said we were fine, just busy with our own projects. That got a few knowing laughs. I watched Daniel's expression. He didn't react. He just refilled his glass and nodded. The more I drank, the braver I felt. I made a few playful comments about how Daniel never goes out anymore, how he's too serious for my taste. Tess giggled, said all men get boring after marriage. I added that mine probably has an Excel sheet tracking my moods. Everyone laughed. It felt good, that attention, that sense of being funny again. Daniel smiled faintly, but his eyes didn't match. Then Tess mentioned the viral clip from last month's office party, the one where Evan and I were dancing near the stage. She said I looked wild in it. I joked that I was auditioning for freedom. Someone asked if Daniel had seen it. I said he probably had and survived. More laughter. I caught a glimpse of Daniel's reflection in the glass wall. Expression flat, shoulders squared like he was holding something heavy but invisible. I wanted to make him react. I said maybe we should go dancing again, that couples who stop having fun lose their spark. He said, maybe they lose it when fun starts meaning something else. I told him not to be cryptic. He said, you'd rather I be quiet. I said quiet was fine as long as it came with a smile. Tess tried to lighten the mood by raising her glass, saying we should toast to strong women and patient men. I clinked glasses first, laughed the loudest. Later, when the bill came, Daniel excused himself for a moment. Tess leaned in and whispered that he looked tense. I said he always looks like that lately. She said maybe he was jealous. I rolled my eyes and said jealousy meant he still cared. She smirked. I checked my phone then. One new notification. I'd been tagged in a post. Someone had uploaded a photo from the table. I was mid-laugh, glass raised, Daniel barely in the frame. The caption read, "Couple goals, but make it complicated." I thought it was hilarious. When Daniel came back, I showed him the post. He looked at it for a moment and said, "You like being misunderstood." I said, "Better than being invisible." He didn't answer. He just left some bills on the tray and stood. Tess called after him, asking if he was leaving already. He said he had an early morning. I sat there, pretending it didn't bother me, scrolling through the comments under the photo. People said I looked radiant. That was enough to soothe me for a while. I told everyone Daniel was just tired, that he'd been working too hard. They nodded, the way friends do when they don't believe you but want to keep the mood light. When I got home, the house felt colder than usual. Daniel was in the study again, laptop open. I asked if he was mad. He said he didn't get mad anymore. I told him that sounded robotic. He said it sounded peaceful. I tried to turn it into a joke, asked if he'd started meditating. He said, "Something like that." On his desk, I noticed his phone screen light up. A reminder popped up again, downtown 2:40 p.m. I teased him about how precise his scheduling was getting. He said, "It helps me stay on time." I asked, "For what?" He said, "For what matters." I laughed and said that was the vaguest answer ever. He didn't look up. I tried to close the distance between us. I said, "Maybe we should go somewhere this weekend, get away from the noise." He said that sounded nice, but that he might be busy. I asked, "Busy with what?" He said, "Paperwork." I laughed too quickly, said he was turning into a machine. He said, "Machines don't forget." I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't ask. Sunday came, and we visited his parents. Mark was kind as always, but his wife kept watching me like she wanted to ask something and didn't dare. During lunch, Mark mentioned that Daniel had been helping him sort old files. He said Daniel had learned how to organize everything down to the last receipt. I smiled and said Daniel always loved order. He gave a small smile back, but his eyes were elsewhere. After lunch, I went outside with Nora, my mother, who'd joined us. She told me not to take Daniel's coldness too seriously. She said men like him need to be shaken up, reminded who they married. "You're the spark," she said. "Don't let him make you dull." That sentence stayed with me. I almost believed it was noble to keep lying if it kept the spark alive. That night, Daniel and I barely spoke. I went upstairs to shower. When I came back down, the lights were off except for a faint glow from the study. I peeked in and saw the printer running again, the tray filling with neatly stacked pages. The smell of toner hung in the air. He noticed me at the door and said, "You're still awake." I said, "You're still printing." He smiled faintly and said, "Almost done." I asked what he was printing. He said, "Memories." I said, "That's creepy." He said, "It's practical." Then he turned off the printer and started placing the papers into a folder labeled Archive A. I asked why not call it bills like before. He said, "Because this isn't about bills." I didn't know whether to laugh or panic. Instead, I said he was being dramatic again. He said nothing, just walked past me toward the stairs. I followed, saying he couldn't just ignore me. He stopped and said, "You don't want a reaction, Elara. You want an audience." I froze. He went upstairs without looking back. The next morning, I found his phone left on the counter. A message preview flashed before it locked. File uploaded successfully. I didn't understand what it meant, but it made my stomach twist. At work, Tess sent me screenshots from the restaurant post. It was spreading faster than I expected. Some comment threads turned mean, saying I looked too happy for a married woman. I replied to none of them. Instead, I reposted one flattering picture with the caption, "Always choose joy." It got hundreds of likes within hours. For a few moments, that attention felt like proof that I was winning. That evening, Daniel came home earlier than usual. I thought maybe it meant progress. I asked if he wanted to watch something together. He said he'd already seen everything worth watching. I rolled my eyes, said he was impossible. He said, maybe. Then he walked over to the fridge, picked up Sophie's art project, and stared at it for a long time. I waited for him to say something. He didn't. Later that night, while I was brushing my teeth, he appeared in the doorway. He said he'd be working late tomorrow. I said, "Oh, so now you're the one working late?" He said, "At least I'm not lying about it." My hand froze midair. Before I could respond, he turned and went down the hall. I stood there staring at my reflection, wondering how long he'd known. Maybe from the first night I said, "I'm working late." Maybe he'd never believed me at all. I used to think guilt felt like fire, like something that burned until you confessed. But real guilt isn't fire, it's fog. It creeps in slow, blurring every line between right and wrong until you start calling it something else. That's how it was for me the day I went to the hotel. It started with a text from Evan. "Need to talk, just us." I stared at it for a long time before replying. I could have said no. I could have said I was busy or that it wasn't a good idea. But instead, I typed, "Sure. After work." My fingers moved faster than my brain. The office that day felt heavier than usual. Everyone was chatting about weekend plans, and I kept pretending to type, waiting for the clock to hit 5. When Evan walked past my desk, our eyes met for a second too long. I looked away first. Around 4, Daniel texted, "Will you be home for dinner?" I hesitated, then typed, "Probably not," still catching up on reports. He replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji. That tiny symbol made my chest tighten. I used to hate when he over-explained things. Now his silence felt worse. By 5, I told Tess I was staying late. She winked, said, "You two finally taking it out of the office?" I rolled my eyes, told her to grow up. But I didn't correct her. I didn't even deny it. The hotel was only a 10-minute drive away. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't planning anything serious. Just closure, maybe some clarity. But when I parked and saw Evan waiting near the glass doors, smiling like we'd planned something secret, it hit me how far I'd gone already. The lobby smelled like fresh linen and perfume. Too clean, too quiet. My heart wouldn't settle. Evan handed me a coffee and said he'd booked a table in the bar upstairs. I told him it was too much, that people might see us. He laughed and said no one cared. I followed anyway. We sat by the window, city lights blinking outside. He asked if Daniel knew I was out. I said yes, but that was a lie. He asked if I was happy. I said I was fine, which was another lie. He said he didn't believe me. I laughed and said he shouldn't. I don't even remember half the conversation, just flashes. The way he leaned closer when I joked about Daniel's robot habits. The way his fingers brushed mine when he reached for the glass. I told myself it didn't count. It wasn't like I'd done anything irreversible. But I could feel the line moving beneath me, and I didn't stop it. At one point, I noticed movement near the elevators. A man standing still, phone in his hand. I couldn't see his face clearly, but my stomach flipped. Evan asked if I was okay. I said I thought I saw someone I knew. He laughed and said, "Maybe your conscience." When I looked again, the man was gone. We stayed another 30 minutes before I said I had to go. Evan looked disappointed but didn't argue. As I left, he touched my arm lightly. It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. The air outside felt too cold. I walked fast to my car, checking my phone out of habit. There was a missed call. Daniel's number, no message. My heart started pounding. I sat in the driver's seat staring at the screen until it dimmed. Then I turned on the engine and drove home. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was off. That was new. Daniel always left it on. I went inside quietly, expecting him to be asleep, but the house felt different, tidy, almost staged. His jacket was gone from the hook, his shoes lined neatly by the door. In the kitchen, the 2 mugs were there again. His clean, mine, half-finished. The only sound was the faint tick of the wall clock. I poured a glass of water and stood there, waiting for something, an argument, a question, anything. When he came in, he looked freshly showered, calm. He asked if work went well. I said yes, still in my office tone. He nodded and said, "Good." Then he took a small envelope from the counter and slid it into his briefcase. I asked what it was. He said, "Receipts." That word again, receipts. Always receipts lately. I tried to make conversation. I said I'd been thinking about booking a weekend getaway. He said that sounded nice. I said maybe the coast. He said, maybe. He didn't look at me once. When I went upstairs, I found his phone charging on the nightstand. A new notification appeared. Reminder, follow-up, 9:15 a.m. I didn't dare touch it. The next morning, I woke up alone. The house smelled faintly of his cologne, and the sound of the front door closing still hung in the air. I looked out the window just in time to see his car turning the corner. I spent the day pretending nothing was wrong. At work, Tess showed me new comments on the restaurant photo. Some were mocking, some flattering. She said people loved the drama. I said they didn't know the half of it. She laughed and said, "They don't need to. You look amazing." Later that afternoon, Evan texted, "Miss you already." I deleted it. Then I stared at the empty thread, like deleting the words might undo the choices. When I got home, Daniel's car wasn't in the driveway. Inside, everything was unnervingly clean. The stack of folders that used to sit on his desk was gone. The printer light was off. Even the usual hum of his computer was missing. On the table sat a small notebook, open to a blank page. Beside it, a pen with faint smudges on the tip. I sat down, flipping through. Every page had neat lists, dates, places, times. My chest tightened when I saw my own entries. Late. Work dinner, 6:10, 11:48. Call from hotel parking lot, missed. Photo posted, restaurant terrace, 9:35 p.m. I slammed the notebook shut. When I looked up, Daniel was standing in the doorway. His voice was calm when he asked if I found what I was looking for. I said I was just curious. He said curiosity was natural, especially when you've been hiding something. I told him he was making things up. He said, "You always say that when you're cornered." I stood up, said he was twisting everything, that he'd gone through my private life. He said, "You made it public first." His tone was so quiet it scared me more than shouting would have. I told him if he had something to say, he should just say it. He said, "Not yet." Then he walked away. I followed him to the kitchen, demanding to know what that meant. He picked up his mug, rinsed it, and said, "You'll understand soon." I barely slept that night. Around midnight, I heard him leave the bedroom again. The sound of the guest room door opening, then that same low click of a drawer locking. I stared at the ceiling, counting every creak of the floorboards, until I heard the faint tone of his phone alarm go off. 3 short beeps labeled paper drop. The next morning, he was gone before sunrise. The house felt hollow, stripped of something invisible but important. By noon, Tess called. She said she'd seen Daniel's car parked outside the hotel. My heart dropped. I told her that was impossible, that he was probably just nearby for work. She said she wasn't so sure. He looked calm, almost satisfied. That evening, I confronted him when he came home. I said I knew where he'd been. He said, "So do I." I froze. He walked past me, set his briefcase on the counter, and started sorting papers again. I told him we needed to talk. He said, "We already are." I told him he couldn't spy on me, that it was obsessive. He said, "Spying is secret. You didn't hide much." I said he was twisting everything. He said, "You twisted it first." Then he looked at me for a long time, and I swear I couldn't tell if he was angry or just finished. He said, "You think this ends with another apology?" It doesn't. I tried to laugh it off, to remind him how dramatic he sounded. He didn't move. He said, "You wanted to play with appearances. Let's see how they look in daylight." After that night, everything started collapsing in quiet ways. No fights, no slammed doors, no crying scenes, just silence that grew like mold, seeping into every corner of the house. I'd wake up and hear nothing but the refrigerator hum, the soft ticking clock, and the occasional sound of Daniel's pen scratching somewhere behind a closed door. He stopped asking where I was going. He didn't even pretend to care. That scared me more than anger ever could. Tess said he was just trying to make me sweat. She told me men like Daniel always come back once they realize they can't win the Cold War. I wanted to believe her. I posted a few new photos online, smiling, hair perfect, wine glass in hand, captions about choosing peace and staying unbothered. People commented hearts and fire emojis. They said I looked happy. For a few minutes, I actually felt like I was. But then Sophie asked why Daddy didn't eat dinner with us anymore. I told her he was busy with work. She nodded, then said, "But he eats breakfast with Grandpa now." My chest tightened. I didn't even know she'd noticed. That weekend, we were supposed to visit Daniel's parents. I didn't want to go, but Nora insisted. "If you skip it," she said, "they'll think you've done something wrong." I told her that was ridiculous. Still, I went. Mark greeted me politely, like I was a stranger renting space in their lives. His wife barely spoke. The only warmth came from Sophie, who ran around showing everyone her drawings. Daniel sat across from me at the table, calm, composed, polite. He asked if I wanted more tea. I said yes, mostly to fill the silence. After lunch, Mark asked Daniel to help him carry something to the garage. They were gone a long time. When they came back, Daniel's face looked different, settled, final. Mark gave me a small nod I couldn't read. Later, while everyone watched Sophie play, I went into the hallway and called Tess. I whispered that the air felt heavy, like everyone knew something I didn't. Tess said I was overthinking, that Daniel was just trying to guilt me. She said the best way to handle it was to act unbothered. "Make him feel small," she said. "Don't let him control the story." So when Daniel came into the room again, I smiled like nothing had changed. I asked if he was finally done sulking. He said, "Almost." That word stuck to me the whole drive home. That night, I found a new folder on his desk labeled Archive B. I didn't open it, but I knew it wasn't Bill's. I told myself he was bluffing, trying to make me panic. He couldn't have proof. I deleted everything. Still, when I passed his desk again, I saw his phone light up. A notification flashed. File uploaded successfully. The next morning, he was unusually cheerful. He made breakfast, even poured coffee for both of us. I tried to joke that maybe we were finally back to normal. He said, "Almost there." I should have asked what that meant. Instead, I told him I had to run errands. He said, "So do I." In the car, I called Nora. She said Daniel had mentioned talking to someone about next steps. I asked what that meant. She said she didn't know, but that I shouldn't worry. He wasn't the type to do anything crazy. "He'll handle it properly," she said. "You should be grateful for that." The words "handle it properly" echoed the whole day. I went shopping, then scrolled through social media like nothing mattered. But deep down, something had shifted. Every calm gesture of his started to feel like a countdown. That evening, I found a small note on the counter. "Dinner for Sophie in the fridge. Don't wait up." His handwriting was precise, the letters sharp. I sat there, staring at it, wondering if it was a message or a warning. I called Tess again. She said I should post something, show confidence, control the story before he did. So I uploaded a photo from last month's office event, me laughing with coworkers, Evan blurred in the background. The caption read, "Strong women don't explain, they evolve." Within minutes, likes rolled in. I almost believed I was fine, until I checked the comments. Someone tagged Daniel's name. Another wrote, "Does your husband know?" I deleted them fast, but it was too late. The photo had already spread to other pages. When Daniel came home, he saw me sitting there with my phone in hand. He asked if I'd eaten. I said no. He said, "You should. You'll need your strength." I asked what that was supposed to mean. He said, "You'll see soon enough." I tried to get him to argue, to shout, to react, anything, but he just walked upstairs, calm as ever. I followed him halfway before stopping at the landing, watching him disappear into the guest room. The soft click of the lock followed. I went back downstairs and opened the back door for some air. The street was quiet, the air heavy. From somewhere nearby, I heard a car door shut and an engine start. I couldn't see whose it was, but I felt it, that something was ending, quietly, carefully, in a way I couldn't stop. The next morning, the apartment felt heavier, almost oppressive. The usual sounds of coffee brewing and Sophie's sneakers on the floorboards were there, but something invisible weighed everything down. I poured myself a cup and tried to act normal, but every glance at the counter reminded me of his side of the world. 2 mugs, his spotless, mine half-finished, a quiet statement that he'd already begun separating himself from me. I told Tess everything. She said I was overreacting. "He's just sulking. He'll make a scene eventually, or he'll beg. Men always do." I nodded, pretending to agree, but inside I felt the first flicker of unease. Something about his calmness was different now. It didn't feel like sulking. It felt deliberate. By mid-morning, I had distracted myself with errands. I went to the store, scrolled through social media, and even texted Evan. The texts were cautious, flirty, just enough to feel alive. Then I noticed it, tiny clues in the environment that made my chest tighten. The printer in the corner of the office hummed faintly when I returned. A blank page slid out slowly. I recognized that sound, that smell. It wasn't aggressive, but it was calculated. When I got home, Daniel was already there. I asked casually if he'd been running errands. He said yes, but I noticed how methodically he placed each item from the shopping bags into their proper spot. I asked why he cared so much about organization. He said nothing, just straightened a folder labeled financial. I tried to get him to react, to make him human again. I told him the weekend could be fun. He said, "I'll see." I pressed, "See what?" He looked at me steadily and said, "If actions match words." I felt a sting of unease. Actions matching words? What did that mean? Late that afternoon, Tess called me again, checking on how Daniel was handling things. I tried to laugh, brush it off, but the truth is, I was nervous. Something had shifted. I couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel had been preparing quietly for weeks, while I was spinning stories, justifying every lie, every late night, every joke about him in front of friends. When dinner time came, I decided to take the lead. I told Daniel I'd cooked, that he should sit and eat. He said, "I'll join if Sophie's ready." His tone was neutral, polite, precise. I tried to smile. "You don't have to be perfect all the time." He said, "I prefer truth over performance." I froze. Truth over performance. That phrase echoed like a bell. Every lie I'd told, every exaggeration, every public display. It all felt fragile now, as if it could shatter at any moment. I told myself it didn't matter. He was overreacting. He didn't understand modern relationships. After dinner, Daniel excused himself. He said he had something to sort. I followed, curious, trying to see what he was doing. He was at the study desk, the one I'd never really noticed before. Papers were stacked neatly, folders labeled clearly. Archive A, Archive B, Bank, Receipts. I asked what all this was. He said calmly, "Records." "Records of what?" I asked, trying to sound light. He looked at me for a long time, then said, "Of everything that matters." I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "Everything? Really? You're exaggerating." He didn't. He simply slid a folder toward me, flat on the desk. I opened it just a crack, and inside were printed receipts, screenshots, timestamps, and notes. My stomach turned. These weren't just bills or work papers. They were proof of my late nights, my texts, my posts, even the office interactions I'd thought were private. I tried to snatch it away. He held it firmly. "Don't touch what I didn't ask you to," he said quietly, without anger. I said, "You're being dramatic. This is insane." He replied, "You called your lies harmless. I'm just treating them accordingly." I backed up, my heart racing. My world felt smaller, like someone had closed in the walls without me noticing. I realized, for the first time, that this wasn't about anger. This was about law, precision, order. Later that evening, while I tried to distract myself online, my phone buzzed again. Not a text from Evan, not a notification from social media, but something unfamiliar. I ignored it, thinking Daniel must have sent it. But the hum of the house, the quiet precision of everything, made me feel watched. I told myself it was paranoia. The next morning, I woke early and found the house empty. 2 mugs on the counter, his clean, mine still half full. On the desk, the folders were open, pages arranged meticulously. A sticky note read, "Bring forms." I felt a flash of fear I couldn't name. At the office, Tess tried to reassure me. "He's just building suspense," she said. "He'll make a mistake. You'll win." But I didn't feel like I was winning anymore. Each folder, each note, each silent morning was a reminder that Daniel had been gathering, calculating, preparing. By midday, I noticed something else. The blinds in the study were slightly tilted, allowing just enough light to illuminate his neat handwriting on the documents. The faint scent of toner lingered in the air. It was a subtle thing, almost imperceptible, but I noticed, and I realized I couldn't ignore it. That evening, Daniel returned home early. He didn't look at me when I opened the door. He walked straight to the study, set down a small envelope, and said, "For you." I froze. I picked it up, expecting another bill, another receipt, but the weight of it in my hands felt different, heavy, final. I asked what it was. He said calmly, "Documentation. For clarity." I swallowed hard. Clarity about what? He didn't answer. He just nodded toward the doorway. "You'll understand soon enough." I stood there, trembling slightly, feeling the world shift beneath me. The calmness, the order, the precision. He wasn't going to yell. He wasn't going to fight. He was going to do this properly, quietly, and publicly. I tried to speak, to reason, to charm, but nothing came out. My voice felt small, inadequate. Sophie wandered into the room, holding her drawing. I asked if she wanted to show me her artwork. She nodded, and for a brief second, I felt normal again. Then Daniel's calm, careful footsteps echoed behind me. I turned, and he was gone, moving with purpose I didn't understand. Later, I saw him outside, near the driveway, speaking quietly with someone I didn't recognize. I couldn't hear what they said, but I could feel the finality in his posture. He wasn't angry. He wasn't pleading. He was just taking the next step. I tried to call him that night, leaving several messages. No response. My phone buzzed with notifications from Evan, Tess, even social media comments about my posts. But nothing mattered. My usual defenses, the public support, the laughter, the attention, they all felt hollow. And then, just as I was about to go to bed, a quiet knock came at the front door. I froze. The house was silent. My heart pounded. I opened it slowly, and standing there was a man I didn't know, holding an envelope.